Okay, so a couple of things to note before we jump into this. This is, I think you might have seen it just really quickly. This is like 40 days old. So some of the things that are in here are not necessarily true, but I would say most of them still are, insofar as they are micro and or they're micro based. And most of the things that are discussed here that you can learn from are macro based, so they're kind of timeless. So let's jump in, see what we got. So again, one more thing. He's going to spend a little bit of time with this. Again, it's a boo over at SkillCapped, who I think does a pretty good job with these. Big fan of theirs. I'm not like a sponsor or anything like that, but if you're not, if you have like $40 to throw at or whatever it is, it's not particularly expensive. They have a ton of resources over there, as well as some of this coaching stuff we've done. So I actually don't remember a lot about this game. So let's see if it like jogs memory, and we'll let him start this up.
Hey, how's it going, Q's? Sorry if I mispronounced your name. My name is Abu, and I've hit Challenger Season 4 through 10. And I've peaked rank 10 on the NA ladder, and I'm going to be going over your VOD today. So the first thing that I want to note going into game, you want to think, how does my champion get affected or affect the rest of the champions in the game, all 9 champions?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, Crumbs, because I realized that he's actually he's done 2 of these, and I'm sure he does a ton of them all the time, but he's gotten my name wrong both times. Maybe he'll see the YouTube. Maybe he'll be one of the like 70 views on our YouTube and see that he's got the name wrong. But let's see what he does with a team breakdown in terms of changes that need to be noted here. Well, first of all, we have a cat top, which is kind of strange. And I think maybe Malphite and cat swapped. So Malphite top, cat mid. In terms of like changes, Kai'Sa wasn't as strong at this point, so that's worth noting. She hadn't been buffed yet. Philios, I think at this point also hadn't been nerfed yet, so he was like super strong. And all of the nerfs that happened recently to Sona in terms of her W, Q, and E had not occurred yet either. So note all of those things as we go through here.
Champions. So let's take a quick look at that. They have a pretty heavy dive. They're going to have Kai'Sa, they're going to have Rek'Sai. Kai'Sa, Rek'Sai, Nico are going to want to dive in. Now, what else do they have? They have a lot of zoning tools. They have Nico, which is going to slow. They have Sona, which is going to disrupt you and get the snare off. They also have Anivia, which is like a huge champion that's going to be zoning you. So what does that mean? If they have dive and they have zone, okay, that means your positioning is going to have to be more perfect than normal. You're going to have to play to a certain way where you're not getting dived by the Rek'Sai, but you're also not diving into the Anivia and the Nico. So that's going to matter a lot here. Now, looking at your comp, you have a pretty heavy dive comp as well, except for one thing, the Philios. You have a Malphite who wants to go in, a J4 who wants to go in, and a Katarina that wants to go in. Now, what does that mean? When these champions go in, you don't really want to go in with them besides your initial ult. If you can get a good ult off, then that's fine. But what you really want to watch out...
It's kind of a dog shit comp. is basically what I'm getting here, because it's so like, if someone's ahead from lane phase and goes in, and we like, Jarvan goes in and Cat goes in and Malphite go in at the same time, and I ult, we need to basically burn down like multiple people with AoE attacks, similar to the Alistar games we were just playing in top lane, as quickly as we can. So if anyone's behind, we're in trouble. And I'm pretty sure, we've talked about this before, I like to submit replays that I've not purposely, but I haven't done well in, purposely picking like the worst possible replay of my games so that we can pick apart as many things, some things that maybe I know already, and just because I was tilted or whatever, like we can see them more clearly, but also just because I think they're like the best for learning, and you pick a game where you're way ahead, like what's the point? But yeah, team comp's not great. Team comp on their end, maybe he'll call this out. Not really a tank on there either, but let's see what he has to say.
Balfour is overextending with them because they can all survive for the most part. But if you go in, you're going to get fucked. Like, you're going to die. Aphelios also needs you to help him and peel against the Rek'Sai that's going to be diving in, or maybe the other champion. So you need to make sure you're also not forgetting about Aphelios. And I'll show you kind of points throughout the game where you might have left Aphelios or you might have overdived. So we'll talk about that later. Next thing that you want to look at after kind of analyzing that, now, you don't have to go as specific as I did. Just try to have a general idea. Okay, I need to play a little far back this game. Or, okay.
So really quick, I want to take a pause there because I think it's pretty easy to watch this replay and be like, okay, you're playing Sona, So these are all Sona specific pieces of advice. Um, I want to challenge that a little bit. Obviously, there's some enchanters off the top of my head. I'm having trouble actually thinking of who they'd be though, who would maybe be okay here. But like I know for a fact that like Janna, Nami, Lulu, well, Lux isn't a real good option. Any of those sort of heroes that have like utility but are pretty squishy, it's applicable for them too. So if you guys are playing those heroes, Lulu may be a slight exception in terms of positioning, but certainly for Janna and Nami, it's going to be very, very similar in terms of like the type of takeaways you can get here from the positioning that he's telling me to take, which he'll get into in a sec. So let's keep going.
Yeah, I need to be a little more careful this game. That's kind of the type of thinking that I would like advise that you have. Don't try to be like too over analytical. It's a hard thing to get used to and it takes time. So next thing I want to look at is going to be your 2v2. General gist of your 2v2 is that you guys are going to outscale them. Sona's pretty much going to outscale anyone in the game. She's one of the best enchanters at just outscaling. So if you're able to have like a neutral or even lane, neutral or ahead lane, it's just so good for you. So what does this mean in this?
So obviously with all the nerfs and some of the build things we've been talking about with Sona, that is even more true now than it was then. Her like early game like poke and E have been nerfed to such a degree that that's not going to really be a viable option anymore. So some of the things you'll see me do here are probably not going to have the same level of payoff anymore as they did 30 days ago. So that's something to keep in mind here as well. The positioning stuff is still true though, but everything he's saying about like late game potential, I would just like multiply that by 2. It's even more important now.
You need to avoid getting overextending to Senna, because if she throws out a W on you and Kai'Sa is in range and there's no creeps, you're gonna die. Like simple as that. You're gonna die, or you're gonna get chunked very low and have to blow your flash, or Aphelios is gonna have to heal. Also, you can minimize risks this lane. As long as you're stacking up, doing your Qs slowly, not getting poked out too hard, you're gonna have an Aphelios that's gonna carry. So you don't feel pressured when you're playing Sona to really do anything. You do have a little bit of proactivity with your ult, but that's kind of a trap in Sona. In reality, with Sona, you want to just minimize risks, be selfish, almost in a way be a KDA player, and just facilitate whoever is the most fed on your team. Now, why did I say...
So all of those things are more true now. Like, all those things that he just said are more true now, right? Like, don't do much on Sona in lane. Like, that was, in my eyes at least, it was like best practice, but you could probably get away with not doing, with like being a little bit more active in lane. Now it's like, no, you just straight up, it's a terrible idea. So yeah, just note that.
Most fed on your team. There's kind of a tunnel mentality when it comes to focusing on helping your ADC, but sometimes your ADC is just going to be shit. Like, you can tell sometimes he's just going to be bad. Like, he's not putting out any damage, he's feeding. Sometimes you're just going to have to press tab and just think, okay, maybe my Katarina is playing really well, so I'm just going to stick around her and help her out and give her the buffs that she needs. Or maybe your jungler is doing well. It really depends. So my point is, just don't tunnel on the ADC. Tunnel on, or try to help who's doing well in the game. Now let's go ahead and go into lane. So first thing I want to note here is that in general, I'm just going to say in general throughout this lane, you did good at landing your Q poke. Like, you were consistently getting pretty good Q poke, you were stacking up your spell thieves. I think that's something you're pretty good at. Now,
so it's funny he should say that, because as we've sort of covered in the lead up, that is now one of the most useless things about Sona. I mentioned this before we jumped into a game, I believe, earlier, but like, landing Q is still important to proc your support item. You still need to make money. Like, your income can't suffer because, you know, you're not super strong in the early game anymore, or you never really were, but like, you're really not at all anymore. You still got to make money, you still got to land poke, but it's just as viable to land autos, in my opinion, as it is to land Qs. Qs chunk a little harder, obviously, but like, as far as I'm concerned, when I play Sona, I'm going to be like focusing more on W now than I am on Q. So as long as I'm landing autos and proccing my support item enough to make some gold, Q is going to be much more of an afterthought for me than it is in this replay. That being said, yeah, like, that was one of my strengths, and that's why this nerf is actually both terrible and good for me. It forces me to play slightly differently in terms of like enchanter play, but at the same time, it takes away what I'm kind of good at with the champion, knowing the Q range and things like that. So let's keep going.
Now, the situations that I want you to be careful of is the situations when you're overextending for that spell thief smoke and you could get really hard punished for it, and you were not. And you want to be careful because, as I said, you're supposed to minimize risks and minimize deaths in this game. So I'm going to show you where you could have died. First thing, that was good, by the way. Good Q. First thing is going to be 220. You get poked a little bit. That's okay. Good poke there. Really good. So far, you're doing fine. That was good. Now, my problem is right here. When you overextend right here, and you go that much past your creeps, look at your 3 creeps. You're going way, way past them. Kaisa loves this. If Kaisa had W here, WQ, I don't think you knew that she had E because she just hit level 2, but let's say normally Kaisa would take WQ. If they hit that snare, you're dead. Like, you're just going to die. Since she didn't take W, you're going to get chunked out really hard. Maybe still die. Maybe if you live, you have to blow flash or heal or both. So keep that in mind right there. You don't want to go past your creeps overextending like this, especially when they have abilities like that. Even if they don't, you're going to get chunked out, and you saw that. You got chunked there.
So, like, yeah, I mean, everything he's saying there, super, super true. Obviously, like, there's much less of a reason to do that now, but even back then, there really wasn't, like, I don't want to misrepresent, for those of you who don't play Sona, how much damage the Q is doing. It's not doing that much damage. So it's not like we're walking forward, landing a Q on Sena, and like, oh, she's chunked by a quarter. Like, no, it's very, 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 sort of like, if you were using it to try and chunk, it'd be very consistent damage over time, as opposed to like a hard chunk every time you land one. So the feedback here is totally legit. I think the thing that you have to understand now is that, like, it would do even less now. So it would be like even more egregious than it was in the context of this replay that was like, you know, a couple weeks back.
Second thing to note, look at Aphelios' positioning here when you went in for that trade. You're trading way past your ADC. You want to get in a habit of just not trading this much past your ADC. Always try to be parallel with your ADC. You don't want to be behind them. I mean, sometimes you do, but as a rule of thumb, you don't really want to be behind them. You just want to be in sync with them so that if you're getting autoed, he can help you, and vice versa. So try to keep that in mind. Now, next clip I want to look at is going to be 3:15. 1 second. Okay, so another similar situation here where you're going way past the should. And it's right here. When you go for this, you're pretty much, if the Senate instantly W's here, you're going to get...
Like, this is egregious. Like, this is really egregious. Like, if you see, so like if I was playing Alistar here, if I'm Alistar instead of Senna, this is a WQ. Like, I'm in on this. Maybe not level 2, but let's say like level 3, level 6. If you see this in lane and you're playing an engage champ, you just engage on Sona and kill her. Like, she has to land an E to do it, but like Nautilus lands a Q, Leona lands her E, all in with a stun. You don't even necessarily have to all in, right? You could chunk me down to like less than a fifth of health if you engage on me or get me stunned or other, like, slept or whatever, just status ailmented and I can't move. Because what he's gonna say in a sec is Aphelios has to basically walk up to here to get to trade, and in that time, you guys can, whoever this team is, can chuck me out super hard. For whatever reason, Senna is just gonna auto me here. Maybe her E is down. I don't really know. No, it's her W, isn't it? But anyway, she's, you know, not really taking advantage of it. Maybe because she can't. Either way, this is like really, really bad. And if you find yourself in a position like this playing support where your ADC is not coming with you, yeah, it's not great. And I think it was Brothko earlier who was talking about, like, you're not playing to the game plan that you told us you were going to play to. Like, yeah, if you're like, well, I'm going to poke, and your ADC is not about it, like, just play around your ADC a little bit more, because you need your ADC there to actually be, like, good in lane and to actually do things in lane. So
chunked out really hard. Look, you're trading away from your Aphelios. Very similar situation. It wasn't as bad because Kaisa wasn't ready for it, but I just wanted you to think of the potential situations that you could get punished for it. And look, it wasn't even that good of a trade for you. You kind of just, it was meh. Like, you didn't even get as punished. He didn't even use his W at all. He really should have instantly W'd you. So just try to keep that in mind when you're trading past the creep wave and past your ADC. Try to keep those two factors in mind.
yeah, really nothing to say about that. Yeah.
Next thing is going to be 5:15, and I'll go ahead and speed myself up to that. So now when you see this situation, they back up all the way. Sometimes they could be cheesing. But when you see them still not here for a prolonged amount of time, and they're still not here, what you want to do right now is hard crash this wave as fast as possible. You need to help your ADC push. At this point, they're most likely not going to cheese with Kai'Sa, Senna. You can tell kind of that they wanted to base there because they were also low on mana. Let's actually check. Yeah, when you see them low on mana like this, like really low on mana, not that healthy, they're not going to cheese you. It's very unlikely. And also, you guys are healthy enough where you could survive it if you can take that greed damage. So what you want to do here is help your ADC push. And look what would happen if you help him push. This wave would have been crashed already. They would have had to deal with an insanely big wave. You have J4 coming.
So here's another take on this. I think it's important maybe not to lose sight of this as an option because what he's talking about isn't the only option here. Now, the reason that he's saying that this is like the right option is Dragon's up and we kind of want Prio and we kind of want to back. So those are like the out of game considerations that would lead you to want to push. Obviously, you know, bot lane is B, so they're back in base. So like, you know, the onus is really on you to make a decision. Now, the flip side is if Dragon wasn't up, for example, you might want to actually freeze it here. I've heard conversations that have considered that, particularly for top lane. The reason you might want to freeze it, so like right in here, is because we have a late game comp in bot lane, Aphelios and Sona. Now, obviously, we haven't had a back yet, so that's probably never going to be the right play here. So he's right. But I think it's important to just like really stress that like if you don't see them in lane, the answer is not always to push, right? It's not always, okay, no one's here, hard crash this shit, let's go. Because I mean, if you're tracking the jungler, then you'll know that that's not a consideration. But let's say you're not, that's something you have to consider before you do that. But more importantly, like sometimes it's good to create an objective on the map that the other team has to come and deal with. And what I mean by that is like, if you're holding it here and like we don't really need to fight because if things stay even, we win in the late game. They need to come and break the freeze, which means they either have to fight us or trade with us or like push up and put themselves at the very least at a risk of being ganked by Jarvan, who loves to gank early. So if there were different considerations here, the Dragon's not up, we want Prio, we want to back, it's really what we want to back, then we might play this differently. As things stand, he's totally right, but I just want to really stress that that's not always the only option or the right option.
Down, you can push in this wave and take a base yourself. Now, since you weren't able to get the wave in, what ends up happening is that you guys end up taking a 2v2 here, but look how much stronger Kai'Sa is than Aphelios. She has a fucking pickaxe over him.
So yeah, so a couple things. First of all, in this case, I actually played this wrong. I wanted to freeze, which was not what my ADC wanted to do. So going back to this idea of like, well, you're not playing your game plan or like, you know, this isn't what you wanted to do, what ends up happening, and one of the reasons we get stuck in this midway, is I'm trying to do one thing, he's trying to do something else. I'm sitting behind him just chilling. Like, we're like, okay, cool, we're frozen, we're good. He's like, no, hard push, right? He's pushing. Neither of us ping, though. And that's actually the root cause of this problem. And I'm surprised it wasn't really discussed because he actually is very, very intense about pings in the other VOD that we watched, obviously. But that's sort of where the root cause is like we don't have any communication between like what we want to do. Now, he's right. And that's something I've learned since this VOD is like my ADC and the coach are both right in that we should be pushing this. But I'm not helping him because I have a different game plan in mind. And once my ADC starts his game plan, I'm not following through with it, which is a mistake on my part. Like he is always going to unfortunately have the onus unless I'm able to ping him away. That's why pings are so important to support. That being said, we do have Jarvan in the Dragon over here. Want to call some attention to that, but. Yeah, they've had a back at this point. They're back with items. We're in trouble. So
he has a long sword and boots over you. This fight's just unwinnable, no matter what. Which results in Aphelios having to use both the sums. Next thing I want to look at is going to be $640. Now, what you can do here is after you get this kill. Or after you push them out like that and you see Rek'Sai, look how much healthier you guys are than them. They're very, very, very low. They have no flash on the Kai'Sa. Let's see, actually. Might be bugged. No, they have no flashes on both their carries. So what you want to do here is ping your J4. Ping your J4 to help you push this in. If you'd ping your J4 to help you push this in and get in the next wave, then you guys can get a clean reset and it's going to help out so much. But instead, what happens is that you guys are kind of stuck, slow pushing back.
and we still haven't backed here. we still haven't gotten any items here at this point either. So like my earlier comment about like sometimes freeze is the right play, it's not the right play here. As he pointed out, they have like pretty serious item advantage over us, and while we might have a slight XP advantage, like we can't fight like this. So.
And right here, if Kaisa just freezes this wave, you guys are so fucked. It's so hard for you guys. Now, why is it really bad that this wave gets frozen when you're playing an enchanter? First of all, is that you don't have the tools to survive a gank. So if a Rek'Sai comes from Tri, which you're not going to be able to ward because they're frozen on you, the wave's frozen on you, it's such an easy pathway for him to gank you. Even warding this brush right here becomes risky because he can just E over and get to you. So pretty much the two situations that I want you to be careful of is going to be, when do I need to push in the wave so we can get a reset? And you also have to kind of think, can their jungler gank you while trying to push as well? That's going to matter as well. The second thing that I want you to think of is when can I ping my jungler to help me push this out? You're not always going to be able to push it out yourself. And if your jungler doesn't help you, okay, that's fine. But at least you tried. I didn't see any pings this game, so try to get in the habit of that. And you'd be surprised. Junglers will help you push it out. I mean, they're getting...
So like he actually does touch on what I was saying before, which is like we're not pinging enough. That's something we've been working on a lot. It's particularly easy now, and we don't have to really worry about trading, and we never really had to. But you know, that's something that as a support is like super important because you know even if he's talking about the Jarvan specifically, but even before that, if we are pinging our ADC to push it or to freeze it or whatever, even though we're not necessarily right, at least we're on the same page. He can counter ping us, and we get an understanding of like, okay, he's trying to push, so then I'm going to do that. People love pings. They love pings, even if they're just spamming them and being a total douche with them. They love to use them. So like if you trigger someone to want to ping and like, you know, basically disagree with you through pings, it's actually a good thing, at least in this situation and in most situations. At least you understand where the hell people want to go and what they're trying to do.
EXP for it, they're getting gold for it. They wouldn't really object to that per se. So next thing I want to look at is going to be 12-15. Right here, I just want you to think of your... We're going to go back to how your champion affects the other 9 champions. That also ties into what your job as Sona is. Your job as Sona, you fit a certain criteria for your job. And what do I mean by that? Your job is to not die in team fights, play selfishly, help your team. And I know that sounds contradictory. By play selfishly, I mean don't try to do more than what you could do. You're not an Alistar. You're not a Nautilus. You're not a hard engage champion. You have ult, that's it, but you are very squishy. So you need to play in a certain way where you're not going to be dying for free. What I've noticed going through your VOD is that you play Sona like you're playing Alistar. You're constantly hugging the enemy, constantly staying very, very close with your ADC, like tight-knit.
Which is telling, right? Because we are playing Alistar a lot. But I guess we're not making the swap when we're swapping champions. So that's something to consider as well, is like what works on one champion is completely useless on another. So
you want to kind of get in the habit of, I'm close enough to help, I'm not close enough so that I'm going to die and get punished. I'm close enough to still pressure the enemy if you have to on Sona, and maybe hit them with your W to reduce damage or something along those lines, right? But I'm not close enough where I'm going to die. And that's up to you to get better at that skill and kind of reevaluate that as you go. So let's watch this and see what happens here. Look how much you're going up. Like, let's just rewatch this. Your job as Sona is not to just go up here. And you're not going to do anything. And auto on the Nivea is not going to matter. Like, this auto Q is not going to matter. You're playing so far up. So many clicks forward that you don't need to do. And that results in you dying for free. Okay. Next thing I want to look at is going to be 13. And now, this is another byproduct too that I wanted to mention, is that when you die like this on Sona, and you're not like being selfish and living, and just playing back, and it's not even really being selfish per se, it's just you doing your job and living, the rest of your team could get punished for that. And here's what happens. Aphelios ends up dying because you die. And I'm not saying this is directly your fault that he dies, I'm just saying that if you aim to maintain your, like, I don't want to say like be a KDA player, but just more so play like a more cautious, less risky type of playstyle, then you're going to be there to help your team on enchanters. And this is going to matter so much. If you were here, Aphelios might have lived, and that could change the course of the game.
Yeah, it's fair.
So now we're going to go to 13-20. Now this is a situation where, look at how, I want you to show you, look at how aggressive you're playing on Sona and how forward you're going. This ult is fine, this is good, but look, you're trying to go for an auto attack on Senna. Like, this is not going to do anything. Like, you're not Alistar, you can't flash Q the Senna and...
I mean, even if we flash queued this, then it'd be bad, right? One of the things that we can throw out there that I think is the reason why this is happening is because we had gotten to a point where we were so worried about like stealing kills from our ADC that at this point in time that we were like, okay, this is secured, let's get damage on Sona. When in reality, I think we've since learned that like it's not secured. You know, any number of things could happen between you know, this moment and you know, a second or two from now that would allow Kai'Sa to get away. Now Kai'Sa doesn't have flash, but to be honest, I don't think I knew that. And you know, it's really, we're putting it in Cat's hands to secure this here. You know, obviously we don't want to purposely steal kills, like where someone is like 4-man, you know, there's 4 of us just collapsing on someone and they're just fucking dead. But in this case, like, we don't know if she's dead, so we kind of have to at least auto her or like Q her or whatever we have up that does damage. So that's important. Like, you don't want to support, particularly, you don't want to steal kills if you can put them on someone who's gonna like hard carry for you, but you need to secure them. Yeah, let's see what else he says though.
Knock her back into the Katarina. You're a Sona. Once you use your ult, you're back to peel mode. You're back to, oh shit, maybe they could come from here. Oh shit, I need to back up. I'm not doing anything. Like, the Kai'Sa's gonna die to the Katarina. You don't need to do anything. But since you walk so far up, you just leave yourself to getting punished by Rek'Sai.
Yeah, that's like a really bad death, right? Like, really
Next thing
bad.
that we're gonna look at is similar to what I was talking about earlier with mid to late game and how close you're getting, and that's gonna be at 1835.
It's good though to see like in these cases when you can break it down like this that like my death is already done like a good 1.5 seconds, 2-3 seconds before Rek'Sai's even in tri-bush, just because we're chasing like that. So yeah, let's keep going though.
Look at how close you get to this Anivia. The Katarina doesn't need your help here to go that far up. Like, you don't need to get that close. And if you are, you need to immediately ult. If you're going to do this, immediately ult. But you can't just walk up, do nothing, and then just flash. Like, the Katarina doesn't need your help to go on Kai'Sa.
Oof. Rough ult.
Same thing I want to know is, look how close you get to the Rek'Sai here. Just watch. I'm going to put it in slow mode just so you can watch. Watch how close you're getting. You're Sona. You don't need to, like, you can auto attack him, sure, from far away, but you don't need to be this close. You should never be this close to anyone. Like, it's just not good. That results in you dying for free. Next thing I want to look at is...
It's funny looking at this again, because it's like, in the moment, you're like, ah, that fucking J4, man, he ulted me in with the Rek'Sai, and so of course the Rek'Sai went on me, but, like, he's totally right. Like, the positioning is bad enough that, like, J4 is just doing his job, and then, like, I'm stuck in it. What's going on, Emerson? We played some interesting builds earlier, man. We were looking in the builds channel. We didn't get a chance to do the Hecarim one, but we did Rammus top and Alistar top. So, anyway, yeah, we're looking at VOD now. Yeah, okay. So moving on here, let's keep going.
2030. Now this is just a simple wording tip. When you have no vision like this. When you have no vision like this, good rule of thumb, you might still die sometimes if they have a gap closed over the wall, right? Like Rek'Sai could E over, but if you're gonna ward, don't ward from this angle. It allows anyone hiding the brush to just insta-kill you. You want to ward from where my cursor is, right here. And that'll save you overall.
Yep, and we talked about this. This is something that we took to heart in a real serious way after I initially watched this replay. But yeah, we talked about this in the last replay, like warding over walls, super safe, super good. Running into the bush to ward, not super good. I think we might have actually died here for this. Let's see.
Next thing I want to look at is going to be
okay.
23-15.
It's pretty easy though. Like, I mean, the other team is totally alive. In terms of like what we see on the map down here, it's kind of hard to see because we've got the stupid replay thing in the way. But like, Kai'Sa's in mid. Otherwise, we don't really know. So like, it's pretty risky to like even walk close to the bush because you know maybe Rek'Sai jumps in and engages and we get 3-man or 4-man gank from bot. Probably not. But like, why even risk it? So like, yeah, really good example of what we talked about at the end of the video last time.
Look how, now look, it's the same situation. You're trying to auto the Senna, trying to help as much as possible, when in reality, nothing you do is going to matter right here. You're just putting yourself in danger. As soon as you see the Katarina go like that, you need to get used to just running away. Now, I'm not saying you should always run away. I'm saying that if there's a skill where you need to understand, can I help this person Okay, so 3 things. Can I help this person? How can I help them? Okay, they can be helped. I'm gonna run. Okay, they can be helped. I'm gonna help. That's kind of the thinking process you want to go through. Since you overstay, it results in you dying.
I mean, I'd trade a
Next thing
kill,
is gonna
but
be
yeah,
24-30.
I trade a kill. I guess my kill
just
goes on a
gonna myself
Nivea,
up.
who's like
I'm almost
huge
there.
at this point.
Now, I want you to look at how far away you are from your team. When you already saw that they were around this area. Your Philios is about like 10 units away from you, so he can't even help you. Katarina is so far away. Malphite's so far away, and J4 is dead. Try to keep in mind your positioning on Sona that you almost, I don't want to generalize this, but you almost always want to be kind of behind your team, playing off them. You don't really want to be going on your own, alone, doing this type of stuff.
So this is just this is like a really interesting piece of this replay because it is something that I'm still working on. A lot of this replay, you know, the Q trading is like really not super relevant, even though we did it well. The warding is super relevant and something we're still actively working on. This part is something that if you watch the stream, I do it a lot, and it actually has less to do with not, in my opinion, it has less to do with like the team, me understanding where my team is, and more about not understanding where the other team is. Just like focusing in on clearing a ward and forgetting that like, hey, there's probably 3 in the try bush right now, and like they're pretty close, and like they could kill me. So maybe I shouldn't try and clear this ward because no one else is around me. Both of those things are important. He's right. Like, you know, you want to play around your team as much as you can, but you can get away with like some of these things like clearing wards and placing new ones if you know, if you have a general sense of like where the team is, where the other team is. Like I know, like for example, like in this case, in this game, like if I come upon just center, I know only Senna's in their bottom jungle and everyone else is top side maybe. All I have to do is worry about the E, right? And so I can dodge the E, clear the ward, whatever. It's still pretty risky to do for like a just a 1 ward. In this case, you probably just drop the control ward in peace. I mean, because the whole point of the control ward, if you break it apart, is to know, in this case, in the pit, is to know when the other team's doing the dragon. Well, if they clear the control ward and there's 5 people there, the odds that they're doing the dragon are pretty fucking good, right? So, yeah. It's just like using logic a little bit more around warding and like why I need to like, is it worth like actually being there to deal with it or not? But at a very basic point, yeah, like he's totally right. Like if you're not sure, if you don't know, like why are you the only person there that's doing that, particularly as Sona, if you're super squishy, you're not like a Nautilus, you're not like an Alistar, like you can't get away with like getting poked a little bit. Like poking a little bit on an Alistar is like a death on Sona. So um yeah, kind of important.
Because you stay so far up. You could have lived here if you flashed earlier, but then that's still your flash blown, which is just so important to have on enchanter champions. Or on any champion.
I don't know what happened there.
But especially on Sona,
Jesus.
because of how fragile you are.
Just got
The last thing
exploded.
we're going to look at is 29-15. This is the last situation.
Just got chased down.
This is a situation where I want you to look how close you're getting and look how close you're autoing. You're autoing in Anivia so far up. Results in you getting snared because you walked so far up. Now look at your Aphelios. Imagine if you had played a little bit to the left up here, healed the Aphelios, played with him. You guys can kite back, kill Kaisa, maybe kill Senna. The fight could have gone so much better. So just try to keep those in mind. Now to re-summarize what I went over, and not to get too demoralized overall, I think if you really work on these and you try to think of the situations and you can minimize these risks, you're going to do really well because your Sona ults were pretty good. And especially in lane, like your Qs were fine.
Apparently, I said I'm the only game in existence where I land my Sona ult every time. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
Like you have a decent idea of how to like play Sona. I would say mechanically, it's just that you're putting yourself in way too many risky situations and not trying to, not really understanding as to how you should play. So just to summarize what I went over through the course of this VOD. First thing is in lane, try to be careful of going too much past the wave, especially versus these champions like Senna that can hit these Senna Kaisa that will destroy you out of the wave. And especially since you're squishy on Sona, right? And you have Ignite too, so it's a combat summoner, so you're not going to have that that exhaust that could maybe protect you, but just in general. Next thing is...
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because he talks a lot in the second VOD that we did, which was, what, like last week or 2 weeks ago, as opposed to this one, just about 30 days old now. About, you know, exhaust being probably preferential, certainly barrier being another option, and ignite sort of being a third option, kind of really not that useful. That's particularly true now, so we can talk about that a little bit. At this point in time, I felt like Ignite was pretty good just because our Q was okay, and like I like to poke, and I know my playstyle. Realistically, in the meta, like Exhaust was probably going to be better. You look at this team comp. I mean, this team comp it's actually not as good, but like you still have Rek'Sai, which is obviously super useful. Kai'Sa to a lesser degree, I suppose. Even so, like Ignite's probably not great. We probably could have gone with Barrier here. But like in the context of post nerf Sona, Ignite is pretty much useless because we're not scrapping it out, right? The only time we would probably be using Ignite now is like later in the game, which realistically, like Exhaust is almost always going to be better in that context, just so we can keep our ADC safe, kite away, help out with that, and we're really focusing more on being like a shielding and healing, you know, bot barrier, as opposed to someone who's trying to put out damage at any sort of like high level. Not that we really could back then either, but like there's really just like no room for it at all now, or there certainly is way less. So yeah, just a little bit of follow up for him there, but
Think about when you need to push in the wave, when you need to call for the jungler, when you need to help your ADC push it in to get a good reset. That's going to be really important. Mid to late game, think about how close am I getting? What champions do I need to watch out for? How can I help this guy without putting myself in danger? When do I need to go in for an ult? When can I just play back? Try to think of all those things, and that's going to benefit you overall. All right, well, thanks for watching, man. Have a great day.
yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty good coach. I'm not gonna lie. I think we definitely every time we watch these, I think that we get something. So I mean, I highly recommend this if you're like kind of on the fence about it. It's pretty affordable, honestly. You have to obviously like be a subscriber or whatever to get these, and they're like an additional like $5 or $6 or something. Now, obviously, you can coach yourself in other ways, but for me, you should be watching all those videos on YouTube that are available and things like that if that's what you're trying to do. But for me, I find that I learn a lot better watching my own coaching videos or watching other people's coaching videos. It's not enough to watch like best practices for support type videos. I want to watch someone who's like around my skill level be told like what they're screwing up on, because more often than not, it's easier for me to be like, oh, I do that all the time. And put myself in those shoes, as opposed to like watching like examples of people purposely doing it, or like someone smurfing in a lower elo and like watching a VOD of like their support or their ADC or something and critiquing them. It's good to hear like both voices, which is one of the reasons that we're even doing these videos, is so like you can understand like the player's mindset a little bit more. I mean, the coach's stuff is like, yeah, obviously like the focal point, but I think in a lot of cases it's good to open up that conversation so it goes both ways and you can understand like where the player was coming from and what they were thinking. That gives a little bit more like narrative purpose to what they were doing, and why they thought what they were doing was correct even though it was wrong. Because I think if you actually pick apart the gold player or the silver player or whoever's point of view and what they're thinking about, when you find yourself thinking about that in your own games, you can sort of think back to these and be like, okay, maybe is that not quite right? Like, are we freezing when there's dragon up and we need to get a back off because that's not quite right? Very rarely is the person who's making a mistake not thinking about a decision that they're going to do, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to like stand here. More often than not, particularly like gold, plat, elo, it's like there's a decision that is in your mind that you want to do. It's just not the right one. So I think understanding that as well is also sort of important. I hope it's been helpful. Watching me struggle bus here. Let me know if you have any feedback for these. Would love to hear more. When I hear see more of these, any champions you want to see me coached on and things like that. We'll look to add some of those. Otherwise, check out the stream. We're around 9 p.m., 10 p.m. most weeknights, and we're definitely around Sundays, starting at 10 p.m., going to about 4 a.m., 2 a.m., 2 to 4 a.m., where we give away skins to followers in the chat. So make sure you check that out. Links below in the description. Have a good one.